We've all seen the modern image of the medieval assassin, a hooded figure gliding across rooftops, blades hidden in sleeves, moving without a sound. They strike from the shadows, vanish into the mist, and leave behind a clean, poetic death. Games, movies, and TV shows have turned them into iconic but the truth about assassins in the real Middle Ages, it's far messier, far bloodier, and a whole lot less glamorous. These weren't elite warriors with secret codes and sacred oaths. They were often desperate men with no training, risking everything for a pouch of silver. Forget high-tech weaponry or perfect stealth mechanics. Most didn't even have proper steel, let alone a backup plan. They couldn't count on a second chance if things went wrong. They had no master plan, no safe houses, no disguises beyond a hood and a prayer. One misstep and it wasn't just their life at risk. It was public execution in front of a cheering crowd. And that execution, it wouldn't be clean or quick. It would be long, painful, and designed to make others think twice. An assassin's job was dirty, dangerous, and deeply isolating. There were no teammates, no family ties that could be trusted, because anyone could betray them for the right price. Their targets were powerful lords, priests, kingsmen who didn't forgive. Guards patrolled in pairs, and rumors of assassination spread faster than fire. Once your name was whispered as a killer, your days were numbered. So why did anyone do it? Money, revenge, or sometimes sheer desperation. They were pawns in someone else's deadly game, a game where success meant escape and failure meant ending up in pieces. That's the reality behind the myth. Being a medieval assassin sucked, and it sucked hard. In the Middle Ages, no one posted a job ad saying, "Wanted professional killer." If you became an assassin, it wasn't because you had dreams of glory. It was because someone powerful, rich, or angry needed someone dead. Lords, barons, church leaders, they all had enemies. Sometimes it was a rival for the throne. Other times, it was a brother with a better claim to the land. Power in the medieval world wasn't stable, it was a bloody Game of Thrones. So when politics got messy, people turned to shadows. But hiring an assassin was a gamble. Most killers weren't trained swordsmen, they were criminals, mercenaries, or peasants with nothing to lose. They didn't come with resumes. They came with shaking hands and half-rusted daggers. Sometimes it was a servant ordered to poison wine. Other times, a soldier paid to stab someone in a back alley after a feast. And often, they were expendable. If the mission failed, they vanished. If it succeeded, they were often killed to erase the trail. Even when they were hired by royalty, they were treated like rats. You did the dirty work. You kept your mouth shut, and you prayed that your employer didn't turn on you the next day. Worse, there were no written contracts, no guarantees of gold, just whispered promises, and the constant fear of betrayal. And if you were caught before you even struck, your employer would disavow you instantly. "I don't know this man," they'd say, and you'd be left alone to rot in a dungeon or worse. So while everyone else plotted in silk robes and velvet chairs, the assassin crawled through mud, blood, and nightmares, just to carry out someone else's vengeance. And when the job was done, no parades, no reward, just more silence and more fear. If you're picturing sleek hidden blades, smoke bombs, or poison darts, forget it. Real medieval assassins didn't have secret arsenals tucked under their cloaks. Most of their tools were crude, clunky, and terrifyingly unreliable. The most common weapon, a simple knife, not a masterpiece of metalwork, but a kitchen knife, a farmer's blade, or a sharpened stick. And these blades weren't easy to carry either. You couldn't exactly walk into a castle armed without raising suspicion. So many assassins had to improvise, hiding blades in food baskets, boots, or under layers of filthy cloth. Some tried poison, but that wasn't easy either. Poisons in the Middle Ages were unpredictable and often deadly to the assassin as well. A few drops too many, and you might kill the wrong person or yourself. And where did you even get poison? Not from stores, from apothecaries who'd rat you out, or worse, test it on you first. And swords, forget it. Assassins didn't duel, they ambushed. Big weapons made you clumsy and loud. And armor, that was for knights, not cutthroats. Most assassins wore peasant clothes rags that let them blend in and run fast. But those rags didn't stop blades. If someone spotted you, one sword slash could end your career and your life. You also didn't have maps, escape plans, or lookout teams. No radios, no signals, no timed diversions. Just your instincts, your blade, and an exit. you hoped no one blocked. Even a simple crossbow was loud, slow to reload, and massive to carry. And if your hands were shaking, good luck hitting your mark. If you messed up once your tools couldn't save you, there were no second chances, no respawns, no healing potions, just the cold steel in your hand, and the fear that it wouldn't be enough. Assassinating someone wasn't just about stealth, it was about luck. And in the Middle Ages, luck rarely sided with the assassin. You might spend days tracking your target, only for them to suddenly change plans. You could sneak into a castle and find guards where none was supposed to be. Your weapon might break, your poison might not work, or the victim could scream loud enough to bring half the town running. Assassins didn't have intelligence networks or blueprints. They relied on gossip, bribery, or sheer guesswork. And if anything went wrong, it turned into a fight for survival. If you were caught in the act, there were no trials, no fair hearing, no second opinions. It was immediate torture, dragged through the streets, hung upside down and gutted. Some were boiled alive, others had their hands chopped off before execution. Some were buried alive as a warning to others. Even a successful kill didn't guarantee escape. You might be seen, recognized, chased through muddy alleys by angry guards or townspeople. There were no allies to whisk you away, and the people you worked for, they wouldn't protect you. They'd erased your name like you never existed. So every mission was a gamble. Every step could be your last, and death was always waiting, slow, cruel, and unforgettable. Modern assassins train for years. They learn martial arts, languages, tactics, but in medieval times, training was, well, let's just say limited. If you were lucky, you might have once been a soldier. That gave you some knowledge of how to fight and survive. But most assassins were untrained. Farmers, street thieves, or servants forced into violence. They didn't know how to move silently or strike quickly. They didn't practice on dummies, they practiced on pure fear. Sometimes they trained themselves out of desperation, stabbing sacks of grain in basements, sneaking around their own homes in the dead of night. And if they had a mentor, that mentor was usually a criminal who barely survived their own job. There were no organized assassin scores, no creed, just whispers, guesses, and pain. They didn't study anatomy. They just aimed for the neck or heart and hoped it worked. They didn't learn how to breathe under pressure. They just held their breath and prayed. And when the moment came, they shook, they sweated, and sometimes they hesitated. And in those brief seconds, lives were lost. Sometimes theirs, because hesitation was death and fear was constant. Their only real training: survive or be forgotten. After a kill, a medieval assassin didn't disappear into a crowd of tourists. They didn't have forged documents, fake names, or clean exits. They had to vanish into places where no one asked questions. Rotten inns, disease-ridden alleys, swamps and ruins. They slept in stables, ate scraps, changed towns constantly. They could never return to normal life. Every stranger might be a bounty hunter. Every knock at the door could mean death. They couldn't write letters, couldn't visit family, couldn't speak their real name aloud. If they had friends, they slowly lost them all, because trust was a liability. One loose tongue could get them killed. So they lived alone, hunted, haunted by guilt and nightmares. Paranoia became routine, looking over their shoulder, checking every shadow. Some turned to religion, begging forgiveness. Others drank themselves into oblivion. Many were never paid for their work. Others were double-crossed and killed days later. Their lives were short, brutal, and lonely. There were no happy. Medieval assassins didn't just face armed guards. They were hunted by kings, bishops, and sometimes the entire church. Murder wasn't just a crime, it was a sin. And assassins were labeled heretics, damned to hell. The church often ordered their capture and execution. Some were excommunicated before their deaths. Others were tortured in dungeons run by priests. Assassins weren't considered criminals. They were seen as demonic, possessed, agents of chaos sent to disrupt God's order. So religious authorities used them as examples. Execution became a public sermon. Torture became spiritual cleansing. The crown, meanwhile, saw assassins as weapons until they got scared. A single successful hit could change the course of history. So kings created spy networks, torture squads, and death warrants. If you were even suspected of being an assassin, you were guilty. No proof required, no trial, just pain. The worst part, Sometimes the church and crown worked together, a holy crusade against the shadows. You weren't just hunted, you were hunted by divine fury and royal wrath, and neither forgave. History remembers some assassins, but rarely kindly. There was the man who tried to kill King Edward II. He misstand was disemboweled in front of a crowd, or the woman who tried to poison a bishop. She was boiled alive in a cauldron as punishment. Many were caught before they even reached their target. Some were tortured into confessing Namzan, then killed anyway. One assassin was sewn into a leather sack with snakes. Another was buried alive under the floor of the castle he failed to infiltrate. These weren't clean deaths. They were spectacles, and they were meant to send a message. Even the few who succeeded often regretted it. Some became fugitives forever. Others went mad from the isolation and fear, and those who thought they'd be paid handsomely often got betrayed or poisoned by their own employers. No loyalty, no honor, just horror. Their lives were turned into warnings. Thales told 2 children to keep them from straying into darkness. The few who made it out alive were ghosts, shadows in a world that never accepted them. Even in success, they lost everything. In the end, almost every assassin met the same fate: caught, tortured, executed, and not just killed but broken, burned, flayed, hung, often left to rot in cages above the city gates. Their corpses were a reminder, a warning. Don't follow their path. There were no grave markers, no prayers, no loved ones to mourn them, just bones and whispers. Some begged for mercy, others died screaming. A few accepted their fate in silence, having lived long enough in shadows. But even in death, they were cursed, their names erased, their stories twisted, and if they were remembered, it was with fear and disgust. Even now, centuries later, their legacy is horror, not heroism, because assassins weren't legends, they were tools, disposable, forgotten, and ultimately damned. So why does the myth of the assassin survive? Because we crave mystery. We romanticize danger, but real medieval assassins weren't freedom fighters or noble rebels. They were victims of power, pawns in brutal games, used, discarded, destroyed. Their world was dark, unforgiving, and soaked in fear. They didn't leap from towers into haystacks. They crawled through filth, hoping to make it out alive. Their targets were cruel, but so were their employers. Their weapons were crude. Their lives were short. No statues were built for them, no ballads were sung. They existed in the margins of history, whispered, feared, and always hunted. So the next time someone dreams of being a medieval assassin, remind them of the truth, the sweat, the blood, the pain. Remind them of the rats, the rot, the betrayal. Remind them that there were no victories, only survival. And even that was rare, because in the Middle Ages, being an assassin didn't make you powerful. It made you doomed, a ghost in the dark, who would never see the light again.